You're watching The Context. It's time for our weekly segment, AI Decoded. Yes, it's our regular weekly appointment with all things artificial intelligence. If you've watched this series before, you will know by now that in each of our programmes, we like to focus on a particular theme. Last time out, we looked at the different approaches to regulation in the United States and here in Europe. This week, we're going to focus on health. You no doubt have read that AI is already delivering huge breakthroughs in medical science. Well, tonight, we will show you how the technology is being used to deliver enormous advances in cancer therapy.
It's about improving automation, improving efficiency, improving the confidence to deliver higher doses in fewer fractions so we can reduce waiting lists, which is particularly important in the UK right now.
But how much investment is there in this new technology, and are we taking full advantage? A report this week from Digital Health that the government has slashed in half the investment it is putting into the NHS AI lab. We will speak tonight to the former NHS Director of AI Innovation, who these days is using the AI to streamline regulations so our public services can more quickly make use of what is on offer. So let me set the context for you. Currently here in the UK, there are 7.5 million people waiting for treatment in England. And in spite of all the best efforts, it has come down from a peak of nearly 7.8 million last September, but clearly not far enough. Now, we spent in 2022-23, the last year of confirmed NHS spending in England, over £180 billion. Spending has increased by an average of 5.5% a year in real terms since 2019-20. So it stands to reason that we need a better solution. More spending does not necessarily deliver better outcomes, and that is where AI promises so much. Our resident expert, Priya Lakhani, AI educator, CEO of Century Tech, is here with us. So where have you been?
So I've only been to Gatwick.
Is that it? I gave you a budget, you went to Gatwick.
Yeah, it wasn't much of a budget, but so I went to somewhere in England, and I went to a place called Electa, a company, and they focus on radiotherapy. And it was an absolutely extraordinary demonstration of the technology that they've built. Because we're AI decoded, I want to focus a little bit on the AI. And what you're going to see is artificial intelligence being used to be able to track a tumour in the body. If you think about prostate cancer, Christian, when a patient has prostate, the tumour moves, right? And so you need to be able to track the tumour while you're treating it. Because otherwise, if you think about it, you'd have to give quite a margin of error, and you'd potentially be treating healthy tissue. So imagine technology that can use live MRI scanning that you're about to see, track the tumour movement, and then, as you saw in that headline there, potentially take the time to treat a patient down and therefore have a huge impact on waiting lists.
Okay.
Super exciting.
Let's have a look.
1 in 2 people get cancer in their lifetime, and around half of those will be treated by radiotherapy as part of their treatment. I'm here at Electa to understand how radiation therapy works and look at their game-changing AI technology. So Dee, you're the Managing Director of Electa. Can you show me how conventional radiotherapy works?
Of course,
and
Priya.
what you've delivered? Right, I'm going to jump on this machine.
Just mind your head as you go back down. So imagine, if you will, you're the patient. The first thing we do is make sure that you're lying in the same position every day. And you can stay still pretty well. What we've got here is a linear accelerator, and we electrically generate a therapeutic beam of radiation that comes out here. Now, what's important is that when the radiation beam comes out, it needs to be shaped. So in the radiation head here, we have something called a multi-leaf collimator, which comprises 160 little metal leaves that move in real time to shape to the irregular tumour volume. So you'd be set up under the machine. We've got traditional KV imaging on this system, and as the machine is treating, you can image, and the machine moves round the patient to deliver the therapeutic dose, effectively painting it to the tumour volume.
So Dee, we know that patients really try and stay still on these machines, but the tumour moves inside. How have you developed cutting-edge AI technology to be able to solve that problem and have this precision beam not affect healthy tissue?
This is soft tissue imaging. So what we have here is an MRI system which we've developed in collaboration with our clinical partners to combine with state-of-the-art delivery system, as I explained, in order to get soft tissue imaging at time of treatment. Combining these two technologies has enabled us to precisely deliver, shaping the beam very precisely, at the same time as using MRI imaging to get soft tissue, crystal clear vision of the anatomy in real time. What I'd like to show you is what we're doing with that information. So here you can see a lung volume. So the dark area here is the lung. What the MRI imaging does is in real time is take soft tissue images and reconstruct them in 3 dimensions. So you're looking here at movement in all dimensions, in and out, side to side, backwards and forwards. The machine learning algorithm, and where this really comes into play, is there's a training phase whereby the patient is set up on the system and the algorithm is watching the delineated target volume, that's the red bit here, that the doctor's created in the treatment plan.
Yeah.
That's where you want your radiation to deposit all of its dose. You want to avoid the healthy tissue. So the template that's been generated by the algorithm using machine learning is delineated in blue, as I've said. And what you're seeing along here at the bottom is a little trace of the movement in 3 dimensions of that target volume. As soon as the target volume that you want to radiate goes outside of that preset window, you can see that the radiation beam is automatically turned off.
Are we going to be solely relying 100% on the AI when it comes to the treatment, or is there some sort of safety mechanism that we have if something goes wrong?
That's a great question. There are always trained operators sitting at this control desk. They're the radiographers, they can be the physicists, depending on the complexity of the treatment. So you don't 100% rely on it. But what's so cool is that from an efficiency point of view, I showed you the setup in the other room where we set the patient up. You can automate really large parts of the workflow, and that's our intention in the future.
What is the actual impact in terms of treatment times with this technology?
Well, one of the most exciting impacts is the confidence that it gives to the clinician and the people delivering the treatment. Because if you can know absolutely where your radiation beam is painting the dose in real time, you can have the confidence to shrink the margin around the target. Traditionally, radiation therapy has margins around the target, margins of safety, margins of error. If you can shrink that, you can reduce side effects. Interestingly as well, if you have confidence about where the radiation beam is going, you can escalate the dose. So imagine, for example, prostate treatments that previously were treated in upwards of 30 treatments every day. Imagine with that level of technology available to you and that confidence, you could actually reduce the number of treatments down to 5 or even 2.
What is the future of using AI technology in radiation therapy?
I think it's about improving automation, improving efficiency, improving the confidence to deliver higher doses in fewer fractions so we can reduce waiting lists, which is particularly important in the UK right now, but also across the world, because we want to give hope to everyone with cancer. And the only way you can do that is to provide access to care.
Mind blown. Mind blown. I mean, that's it. That is tracking in real time, increasing dosage in real time, cutting the number of appointments.
Yeah, you can change the radiotherapy plan daily, right? Because you have a visual on how the tumour's also reacting to that precision beam. Right. So if you're in the UK, and we had that really brave lady just a couple of days ago say to the Prime Minister, say to Sir Keir Starmer, is the NHS broken? And she talked about her treatment and how a friend of hers lost their life during being on these waiting lists. So the impact is absolutely huge, Christian, in terms
you can
of
go through so many more patients in such quicker time, cutting the waiting list. The problem is, as you said, regulation. What a lot of people out there won't know is that you helped co-write the regulation, the review for AI in healthcare with Sir Patrick Vallance, the former chief scientific advisor.
That's right. So last year, the Chancellor asked us to review regulation of AI across all sectors. One of the most interesting points, and I'm looking forward to having Joseph come on talking specifically about the NHS, but one of the specific points that we actually learned was that because we don't actually have overall regulation of AI, and they're going to do this on a case-by-case basis in the UK, one of the issues we have to solve is that regulators themselves aren't actually upskilled in this area to be able to think,
well, why
is
would
this
you be?
safe,
It's
is it
so
not?
new.
But also the incentive isn't there. So if you're a regulator, you're there to keep people safe, aren't you? So you're trying to de-risk. So now we're asking them to innovate. And can you see how these two things conflict?
They're always in
So
conflict.
we've got a lot of work to do in the UK to be able to take advantage of this. And I know that Joseph is going to shed some light on why the NHS specifically might be struggling to do this at the moment.
Well, 5 years ago, the then Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, launched something called the NHS AI Lab. There was an initial £250 million investment to work on challenges in healthcare, including early cancer detection, new dementia treatments, more personalised care. But reports this week are that just as the technology leaps forward, the budget is being slashed. So let's bring in then Joseph Connor, who was previously the NHS Director of AI Innovation. He's now the CEO of Careful AI Limited. We'll talk, Joseph, about what you're doing to streamline the process very shortly. But maybe you could pick up what Priya was just saying about the challenges you faced when you were in the NHS when it came to adopting new AI and the technology.
Okay, so if we go back to when that was, which is back 2000, 2017, 2018, the challenges at that time weren't just the issue of regulation. It was a relatively new area of awareness for the NHS. So there's quite a lot of difficulty for people to understand what it is. And there is, to a large degree, a lot of confusion as to their value. But when you raise awareness of case studies like you've just done with Electa, it becomes obvious that there's a role for things that can provide predictive analytics about what technologies can be used and applied to healthcare. I think one of the challenges that I faced at that time, which is we were trying to get more people in the NHS to actually be the originators of the AI. It came down to the issue of resources. The AI lab was just about starting. There wasn't anybody that a clinician could turn to say, I want to address this issue. Can you find me somebody either internally to the NHS or externally to the NHS to help me? So the NHS AI lab was formed, and its job was primarily to try and bring AI into the NHS. And if you think about the degree of investment that was provided, it was primarily to help people get a foothold into the NHS and create the evidence to show that things were clinically safe. It wasn't to actually develop the product. However, where we are at the moment is there has been a cut, but there's still a focus, I believe, within the NHS and its relationship with the MHRA to keep regulation to a minimum, but whether they've got enough resource to be able to do that is questionable. One of the challenges that exists is it takes maybe 6 to 12 months just to get what's called a class 1 device, a device that just gathers information together. And it can take between 2 and 5 years to get a class 2 device, something that gives clinical advice like the one you've just shown. Now that's £2 to £5 million just to get through the door and to deal with all the regulation, etc.
And Joseph, do we have the right product managers in the NHS? And if you, for example, can sample one of your AI pieces of software in one trust, how transferable then is that to another NHS trust? Because I know from some of the meetings that I've been in the past, actually it's pretty fragmented, I've heard, in terms of how the NHS can work.
Okay. I think one of the challenges is believing that the NHS is one single body. It's the largest or 6th largest organisation in the world with millions of people in it. But in essence, it operates in regionals where you've got people who are individually responsible within their location for commissioning. And by commissioning, I'm talking about buying technology and services. So there is no one overall strategy for developing or implementing AI in or across the UK.
So what are you doing? What are you doing, Joseph, in your new role? And with the experience you have of that, what are you able to do to change the system?
Okay, well, one of the challenges, and arguably the biggest challenge, is gathering the evidence to show that your system is safe and it's fit for purpose. And to do that, you typically need to gather evidence using people and research, and that's a long process. So what we've developed is a series of AI agents that can gather information to enable you to present that to the relevant authorities. And we've
so
also
you're using AI to deploy the AI?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it sounds a bit strange, but you can imagine a scenario. I won't give you the exact scenario. So, if you're developing AI and you want it to be fit for purpose, you need to prove that you've engaged the audience and that the AI is appropriate for the audience that you want to apply it to. To do that, you need to understand what the needs and aspirations and the health outcomes are of people. In essence, you need to interview them. So what we do is use a chatbot environment to use motivational interviewing to ask people if they were to use this technology, what do they think? What are going to be the outcomes? Are they happy to use it? What are going to be the implications for them? What biases do they have? So it's gathering specific information about where they are and what they want.
And
That's important because it's a requirement for that in regulation.
Joseph, very quickly, you sit on the Standards Committee when it comes to AI in healthcare. So do Britain need to develop its own standards, or do we need to have aligned standards with the EU and the US so that companies that are developing all of this technology have a huge market that they can access? How do we go about this so that we're not stifling innovation and actually trying to leverage AI in Britain and take advantage of the opportunities of not just technology built here, but also elsewhere?
The important thing, as far as the supplier is concerned, is that they're able to comply with legislation in the countries that they want to operate in. If we have different legislation in the UK to America or to Europe, it's going to be very difficult for people to come to the UK and set up and say, I want to operate here because, and I want to develop a marketplace here because it offers me market potential. There is some variance in the standards that we use in the UK to what happens in Europe and what happens in America. And it's very, very important to make sure that those are aligned. If we don't do that, why should people come to the UK to develop products? Why should they implement products in the UK? There are people in government, and some of the work that you've done has highlighted the need to make sure that that is happening. But I can't emphasize it enough. It just needs to happen.
Yeah.
You need to be able to deliver that.
Joseph, it's a really good introduction to something we're going to talk about after the break, but thank you very much indeed for that, Joseph Connor there. So that is an insight into how we tackle disease using AI and what we need to get past the regulation. But what if we could prevent the disease from ever appearing in the first place? Coming up, a company in San Francisco who are developing an AI-enabled protein to redesign our problematic DNA. I wish you could hear what Priya talks about in the break. She blows my mind with some of these things.
It's not Burnley football.
It's not Burnley football. It's the moonshots like we're going to talk about now, because 10 years ago, some of the leading geneticists in the world developed a technology to modify DNA sequences within living organisms. It's called CRISPR. You'll have seen reports before about the potential application of that technology in targeting genetic disorders. But that technology was using natural proteins. We're going to introduce you to a company in San Francisco that's just developed synthetic molecules designed and controlled by AI. They were developed and styled on natural proteins. There are something like 5.1 million of them that the AI model learned to recognize. This new synthetic molecule is able to target specific DNA sequences where they can edit out potential diseases and conditions. Here with us from the company, Ali Madani. He is the CEO of Profluent. Did I explain that correctly, Ali? Was that the right sort of explanation of what you're doing?
Christian, that was absolutely fantastic. This is really a scientific moonshot that there's a lot to unpack here specifically. We really sought out to learn the language of biology, the underlying blueprint that nature has provided us, so that we can design novel medicines, breakthrough medicines from scratch using AI as our interpreter and our writer and designer. That's correct.
And so I don't really know how Christian feels about using AI to modify or redesign the genetic code of humans. I did just want to zoom in on his face when I said that, just to see what he was thinking. But Ali, you have demonstrated that you can edit or rewrite the human genome with AI. Can you please unpack that for us and our wonderful viewers?
Absolutely. It really starts with DNA in particular, where DNA is our fundamental blueprint of life and human health as well. And there's a wide range of diseases that have determinants that would be found in DNA. So one example of which would be the sickle cell disease that's prevalent in a serious condition worldwide in particular. And we've seen really exciting approvals both in the UK and the US for a CRISPR medicine that can take a patient that is otherwise unhealthy, which has sickled red blood cells specifically, edit the patient's genes in particular to find a one and done lasting cure to make the patient now healthy and not symptomatic at all. So I think that's really the promise of gene editing that has been enabled by CRISPR, and we're really excited to build upon that and go beyond that altogether.
I mean, that is a complete moonshot. As I described it at the beginning, I don't know much or how far you can go with this, but I can well guess what the implications are. I mean, what other potential cures are we talking about?
Absolutely. At least in the realm in genetic disease, you are now able to alter the human genome in effect, and then be able to find precise cures to disease that would otherwise we didn't have the tools to develop altogether. So AI inevitably is an interpreter. It's learning the underlying rules of biology, being able to design precise and safe medicines. And
but just to take a step back there, is it looking at these 5.1 million molecules and saying, okay, that's the tool I need, I'm taking that molecule and I'm going to send it here to that pink thing we've just seen revolving in our screen?
The pink thing.
Correct, yes. Yeah, so one way of thinking about this is we are providing attributes and properties that come to mind. We can feed into this tool, and specifically the AI model, broadly speaking, okay, we want to go after this target. There is this structural constraint that comes to mind. There's this functional task that we have in mind. And the AI model can generate sequences and libraries of sequences that we can then pass on to biologists who will synthesize this and test this in human cells. And specifically for OpenCRISPR, or OpenCRISPR initiative in particular, the rotating structure that was shown there, that is one of those molecules that was the world's first demonstration of a molecule that can precisely go into human cells, edit DNA, and this molecule was generated from scratch using AI and not found in nature in particular.
Ali, what I really want to make clear here, so you have this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, so you've got this guide RNA that can go and target the DNA, and then when it wants to cut, you've got these molecular scissors, if you like, which is called the Cas9, which I think was the image that we just showed. With the green and the blue. I love how we're using, Christian and I are using colours to explain this. And it goes and cuts the DNA, if you like. But what I really want to try and explain here is why Profluent has been so cutting edge here. Because what you've done is you've open sourced the AI code. And this is really because in the past, we've relied on nature and discovery, right, to be able to cure disease. And what you're trying to do is something very, very different, which is saying rather than happen upon potential discovery to help us cure disease, you're saying, let us design it. Can you explain that?
Quickly.
That's
we're running out of time.
So if you remember from grade school, specifically the example of penicillin in particular, where Alexander Fleming, for example, by happenstance had left out a petri dish and mold specifically to develop antibiotics over a century ago. The process of drug development has maintained that underlying technique of, by happenstance, coming across something in nature and repurposing it for human therapeutics. Wow. This is a paradigm shift where instead of relying on nature, we can shortcut evolution altogether. And for pressing needs, diseases, patients with real diseases, we can feed this into the model and design from scratch a custom solution, a bespoke solution to address that in a safe manner.
Shortcutting evolution, Christian.
Shortcutting evolution. Ali, Priya, thank you very much. We are out of time. Just a reminder, if you missed some of the programme, it's there on BBC YouTube. We'll do it same time next week. Thanks for watching.